May Jesus be praised and onward with Mary, a good and holy day. All of you, my dear children, in the sacred hearts of Jesus and Mary, and in the most chaste heart of Saint Joseph. So here we are again with our morning feature, Saints and Coffee. Today's Friday, the 22nd of November, and the Church celebrates the feast day of a great glory of early Christianity, of the Catacomb Church. I'm talking about Saint Cecilia. The Virgin Mary is the patron saint of sacred music. She's always depicted seated at an organ, playing for the glory of God. She's also the patron saint of all those who animate liturgical song, one of the most important ministerial services. Saint Cecilia is a virgin martyr of the 3rd century who was betrothed to Valerian, but she gave herself entirely to the Lord. And so Valerian, according to tradition, sees his guardian angel beside her and converts with his brother Tiburcius. The two brothers die as martyrs, and then Saint Cecilia also dies a martyr after Tiburcius and Valerian have been baptized. And the wonderful thing about Saint Cecilia is that she's present in the Roman canon, and her name, along with Saint Agatha, Saint Luke, Saint Anastasia, Saint Agnes, they are the glories of the martyrs of early Christianity. I was saying the wonderful thing is that there in Trastevere, in the heart of Rome, is the church, the basilica, where I often went when I was a student in Rome. I lived there for a while. Imagine, in Trastevere in the house of Saint Francesca Romana, the Ponziani house. They're brief moments, but unforgettable ones. Just a short walk away, as Romans and Trasteverini know, is Santa Cecilia in Trastevere. This basilica built in honor of this glorious witness to Christ our Lord. She had a special characteristic. She loved the gospel, kept it close to her heart, and was even found with the gospel on her person, according to tradition, because 3 days before, after being exposed, she asked for 3 days to preach the gospel. Think, we invoke her so that we too may be strong in faith in the face of life's trials, looking to Jesus on the cross. Today's also Friday, so I remind you that it's the day of the Lord's Passion. So everyone is obliged to observe those 2 expressions of devotion, which are abstinence from meat. No meat or meat products today. Please remember. It's important, not even the derivatives, so cured meats, etc. And then the pious exercise of the Stations of the Cross, with which we adore Jesus on the cross. We look to Jesus on the cross, and on Fridays throughout the year, not just in Lent, we adore him and unite our sorrows, our sufferings, our crosses to the cross of Jesus. Otherwise, our cross will weigh us down. Father Pio said to a daughter, "Don't let the cross frighten you. If its weight makes you falter, its power will lift you." So that's why today, like every Friday, Jesus dies on the cross for us. And we, by giving up meat and its derivatives, and doing as much of the Stations of the Cross as possible, particularly adore him, looking at him on the cross, thanking him that he died on the cross for us, then yes, we find the strength to carry our daily crosses too. Yesterday, the 21st of November, there was a wonderful prayer meeting in Saviano in the province of Cuneo. Here are some pictures. It's a small center. The room where the chapel was set up was already full, so the organizers had to improvise. This is one of the little families. See what a marvel when they say that only the elderly come from the small remnant. The dishonesty of our enemies knows no bounds. And this is the image I'm showing you, taken when, joyful and beaming, I also went to see the faithful who were in the other room in the meantime, since we couldn't all fit in. Here, you see I'm moving. There might be a slight line problem, please bear with us today for that, but perhaps the video isn't the problem with the line. I'll ask the director. Right? So this is the other room, which then filled up, because this is the beginning. But later, if we see the images further on, during the rosary, you see that the room, the central one and the side one, filled up. Time to reflect. Here, it should be, I don't know if they're always the same images. Here, this is the rosary prayed in the other active room, which also filled up afterwards. It's truly extraordinary seeing how people respond to these calls to prayer and these moments of faith, which seem like cenacles. As Blessed Catherine Emmerich said, the true church will survive in cenacles, as she says, homely, familiar. That's just what we saw yesterday. I thank the organizers, particularly Francesco and Maria, and I thank all the faithful who were present yesterday. As you can see, I'm traveling. I couldn't stop to do the Saints and Coffee segment in a hotel room because I've got hours of traveling ahead of me. I have to go to France because the day after tomorrow, Sunday, the 24th of November, at 3 o'clock, we're at this address here. PSAACC, Rue de Varnecourt, Pril-Mézières, in Charleville-Mézières, France, at 3 o'clock. A little bit of French left at 3 o'clock. At 3, we're there? Right, a call to our French-speaking faithful to be present. And of course, I thank you once again, seeing as there's no Saints and Coffee tomorrow. So this is the last chance to do so. I thank the faithful of the small French remainder. In particular, Sylvia, Dalgisa, and Raoul, who have put and are putting a great deal of effort into organizing this moment of faith. They're in Charleville, the day after tomorrow, Sunday the 15th of Lyon. It'll be a moment of grace. Broadcast live, we'll broadcast it live. Let's see how many faithful come. The collaborators said around 30, about 30 faithful should be present. That's something already. And then, let me quickly remind you of next week's appointments, because we're preparing for the Novena of the Immaculate Conception, which begins the Friday after next. So that's 8 days from today, the start of the Novena of the Immaculate Conception. But in the meantime, remember that next Wednesday, the 27th of November, is the very important feast of Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal. There it is, the medal that Our Lady herself gave to St. Catherine Labouré on Rue du Bac in Paris, where I've been a couple of times. I've even taken groups there. It's a chapel where you can truly breathe the supernatural. So, we'll celebrate this important festival in Genoa at 16:30. Wednesday, the 27th of November, we're in Genoa. I always remind everyone, just in case it escapes anyone's notice, that the meetings are free. There's no need to pay. We don't ask you. What are your names, your email addresses? Because Mass is a public act. It's not celebrated for private clubs. Anyone who wants to come is welcome. The next day, Thursday, November 28th, we're in Turin. It's the day from the Miraculous Medal to the start of the Immaculate Conception, a small Piedmontese Catholic remnant. We'll meet at the Pacific Hotel Fortino, our usual spot near the Basilica where St. John Bosco rests. At 4:30, we'll have the Rosary, confessions, Mass, and perhaps Eucharistic adoration, as in Bologna. Done Bologna. And speaking of Bologna, I'd say coincidentally, or rather providentially, this year too, the meeting and the start of the Novena are in Bologna. Next Friday, the beginning of the Novena of the Immaculate Conception, we'll do it in Bologna, always at 4:30 in the afternoon. Saturday, the second day of the Novena, we're in Trento, and next Sunday in Udine. Meanwhile, we're working on the organization of the two events coming up soon. First, on Wednesday, December 4th, we're in Zurich for the Swiss language course. We'll meet there. Here, this cover has been prepared. Look how well made it is. It says 1730, Kron Hotel, Unterstrasse Rosary, and Holy Mass. And I'd also say it's very important what's written at the bottom in blue. With the light blue background, following the conference, which church after Benedict XVI, the speakers are, the cover could be raised a bit to see it all. At the bottom, you can see my name, but not all of it due to space constraints. So I ask thee if it's possible to show it in full. You see it says Don Alessandro Maria Minutella. Ah, I didn't see it. There it is. Professor Luca Brunoni, church historian, and indeed there will be this moment of grace, the meeting. It's absolutely free. There's no entrance fee. You're all invited to attend. We're doing it in Zurich because it's quite central in Switzerland, so people can come from various parts, from various cantons, and then, of course, the most important meeting is on Sunday, December 8th in Milan. Don't miss this appointment, my dear children. We priests will be there, except Father Iohannes, and hear confessions from 10:30. At 12:30, then at half 2, we'll begin the Rosary celebration, the welcoming of Our Lady, the blessing of the families, the floral tribute, and then Holy Mass with the Eucharistic procession. Coaches are being organized from various parts of Italy. I thank the regional representatives. I thank the organizers and everyone who's putting in a huge effort to make this happen. A free coach is leaving from Rome. One is already full. Hurry up if you want to come without paying. Coming from other regions to Rome, the coach will leave. Or coaches if you register, because one is already full. So then don't complain if you sign up at the last minute and there's no space left. Do it by the 30th of November, because one coach is already full. It'll leave Rome at 5:30 in the morning, and if there's another one, they'll leave at the same time. Tiburtina. From Rome Tiburtina station, it'll take about 6 hours in total. 5 or 6 hours. 6 hours is better, and it arrives in Milan in good time for the meeting. Then, at 7 o'clock sharp, it returns to Rome, where it's expected to arrive around 1 or 2 in the morning. That's the basic plan, my dear children. Right then, I also wanted to remind you that we've announced that in Trebasileghe, we can restructure the small drum, structurally speaking, and then to make it more beautiful, and so on. But this requires the help of you all, right? But we're in a bit of a fix now, really, because this has become quite an undertaking, a Catholic undertaking. Please be generous, and please be generous with me. With the opera, this is the IBAN, and then there's the postal current account, which is easier to access. Help us so that the opera can serenely proceed and go forward according to God's heart. Today, it being Friday and the day of the Passion of Jesus, there are also the pioneers. Not to say that the pioneers are the fruit of the Passion of Jesus, I'd never say that, but to say that on Friday evening at 9 o'clock, these dear men are going to Little Nazareth, but those connected are even more numerous. They pray the Holy Rosary at 9 o'clock. I'd really like to connect, but I'm afraid it'll be quite difficult for me today. But let's pray for the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and let's connect, if we can, to this moment of grace, which every Friday is live at 9 p.m. on Radio Domina Nostra's YouTube channel. Last night's episode was incredibly interesting. I received so much gratitude, even from friends I didn't expect. Last night I commented on chapter 5 of the Revelation of St. John, the Lamb opening the seals, the book, the throne. I enjoyed it very much too, especially the final part, with that emphasis on the risen Christ, who is the joy of our hearts, the light of our lives. Jesus is alive, Jesus is alive, Jesus is alive and risen, and He is our joy, He is our life, He is our life. And the horizon opens up. So the story of the world makes sense. It was the 13th episode. For those who couldn't follow it, I'd recommend, in your own interest, if you want to follow it, you can find it on the Radio Domina Nostra playlist, where you should subscribe, always like, because participation is very important. Let us pray that the meeting in France and then the one in Switzerland, these international meetings, may continue to grow according to God's heart. Of God. And then I wanted to say something else very important. You know that on the 15th of August, around then, we started a series of catecheses. We opened a course entitled Little Great Heroes of Faith. We were doing it before I left in September, on Saturday evenings. Then, obviously, for apostolic ministerial reasons, seeing as there are almost always meetings on Saturdays, it was impossible to hold these meetings, so I've moved them to the mornings. So tomorrow, it looks like I might still have time to do it in the evening, so I confirm it'll be tomorrow evening. Last time we talked about Anna Zarakova offering herself as a victim to make amends for abortions. Tomorrow, there she is. Tomorrow at 9, I'll expect you. I'm saying this Friday as there's no Santia Cafe Saturday, and I don't advertise mornings. Don't forget, tomorrow we'll discuss this girl. Look, it's great having a saint's photos, not just paintings. We feel closer to her. She's one of us. Maybe we see ourselves in these photos, thinking we too could become saints. I'm talking about an extraordinary young woman, servant of God, whose beatification cause is underway. I'm talking about Audrey Stevenson. We'll talk about her tomorrow night. A truly fascinating figure. It's wonderful to see this panorama of saints, children, young people, adolescents, mostly unknowns, whom God has led onto the path of holiness, more often than not through suffering, through immolation. Here's tomorrow night for me, this young lady. Perhaps just by looking at her, you'll notice she must have had a rather mischievous and special character. Audrey Stevenson tomorrow night at 9 o'clock. Right, having said all that, let's move on to today's episode. I can't waste too much time because, as you know, I'm traveling, and I wouldn't want the signal to drop. If that happens while I'm facing the Alps, those who live here in the Cuneo province, in Turin, especially in Turin, then the Valdostani are used to this sight. I'm not, and I remain. I'm telling you because I want to testify to you, truly in awe. I have before me the snow-capped peaks of the Alps, and it's a masterpiece. It's truly this natural border that divides Italy from the rest of the world, because Italy is the world. Then there's also the rest of the world, never mind, but now I'm very patriotic. I think many of you will have noticed, it's Italy that holds 75% of the world's artistic and cultural heritage. Then there's the Italian people. Even last night we had a bite to eat. I want to say this with real joy. It's always lovely, because the Italian people are truly extraordinary in this respect. From Turin to Naples, from Palermo to Trento, it's always wonderful to be together because Italian cuisine is inimitable. Last night, a loyal follower, whom I thank, I won't mention her name out of respect for her privacy, she brought homemade chocolates. This is so Italian, homegrown tomato bruschetta on wholemeal bread. Then they brought out the mini pizzas and all that. It was all lovely. They offered us wine. Honestly, it's always so lovely. I was saying I could see the Alps. I wanted to pay tribute to the nature that God created. We're talking about creation and nature, the creation that we Christians should call God's, even if there's a bit of fog here and there because today's a sunny day. And I'm telling you, the cold I felt yesterday in Savigliano was truly, I endured the cold stoically. Even now let's see what the car registers, there's 1 degree. All right, let's move to today's topic as I reach Italy's natural border. I'm not saying France, I'm saying Italy and the rest of the world. Now, joking aside, of course, I'd like to greet the Italians from the smaller group. There are so many who are Italian, they're from the small remainder, but they live abroad outside Italy from Switzerland, France, Germany, Spain, Portugal, and also from this other part of Europe, Ukraine, Poland, scattered across the world, and then those from Latin America. But let's move on to today's topic. Today's window title is Confession with Christ, Robate in Lucerne. The steps, you see there's the AI acronym, Artificial Intelligence. You can also write it in Italian. The initials, that is, IA in Italian, Artificial Intelligence, Confession with Christ Robot in Lucerne, the steps of artificial intelligence. So, I thank my lawyer friend from Milan who sent me this news. which I'd missed because obviously I'm traveling, so I can't always know everything. But the news is noteworthy. The news is noteworthy and allows us once again to reflect on what's happening. What happened? It happened that I read a virtual Jesus is confessing the faithful in Switzerland, in Lucerne. The installation causing all the fuss uses artificial intelligence to encourage people to reflect on technology and religion. The Vatican's one of the players heavily sponsoring artificial intelligence, an artificial intelligence that, however, raises more than a few ethical and moral questions, is the Vatican, which is the official expression of Bergoglio's false church, promotes and is one of the players in artificial intelligence. What's that? It's the ability, for those who don't know, because it's a new frontier, a brand new frontier. So young people, the new generations, will obviously be dealing with it. I'm talking about teenagers. They'll be talking about artificial intelligence in the same way that we, in our late teens, started talking about smartphones and so on. And the final frontier is understood as the capacity, the intelligence, artificial intelligence, or the attempt of an artificial system, a kind of computer system that arrives slowly, but apparently now they are moving all over the world. And in my opinion, there is a link with the 2030 agenda to simulate. Here's the passage: human intelligence through the optimization of mathematical functions. So it's an attempt to create a human artificial intelligence like the human mind. Only the project is Luciferian. I'll tell you straight away what I think. It's a very problematic moral decision that may secretly have a Luciferian perspective, that is, creating us regarding transhumanism. There's a very strong link between artificial intelligence, in my opinion, between the possibility of the frontier, of this artificial intelligence and transhumanism. Included in transhumanism is the construction, the creation by the world's power brokers of the age-old Frankenstein dream. It's just that Frankenstein, in the woman's novel, is nothing more than an assembly of human organs, while the precise project is to create a man who is trans, in the sense that he surpasses, and therefore it's a project of Satan. A little Luciferin of the global powers sold to the devil who want a superior man, Nietzsche's Übermensch, a man superior to the man created by God. And the man created by God, we know and understand how things work, has limits that God himself has imposed. Now, I don't have the opportunity to go into theological detail here, because otherwise I'd get lost. Conceptually speaking, I haven't got time to delve into the question of on the origin of human limitations, in the sense that man experiences finitude. As the existentialist philosopher Heidegger would say, man is Sein und Zeit, man is being and time. So man, the human being, man as such has qualities, specificities of which he is absolutely aware. The human mind is simply something extraordinary. St. Thomas Aquinas says that it is worth more than the heart, of feeling, of love, of will. And I absolutely agree with St. Thomas Aquinas regarding Francis and St. Bernard, the school of monastic thought of the 12th century, and then, above all, the 13th century, because St. Thomas Aquinas says that the intellectus, the human mind, is God's greatest creation. I absolutely agree, as I think you will too. The human mind is capable, but it has limits. It has limits. So artificial intelligence, in my opinion, which it's an expression, it's no accident that the Bergoglian Church, a player among the world's power brokers, sponsors it. It's an expression of the 2030 Agenda Project, a transhumanism aiming to overcome the limits set by God. And this is holy, and this is Lucifer, and this is the devil, and this is the Antichrist. I'd say the Antichrist itself. That the problem is serious and not just a concern for bigots like Domina, as some might think. is evidenced by Stephen Hawking's intervention in 2014 when he warned about the dangers of artificial intelligence. From a purely scientific point of view, he considered that this artificial intelligence, which the global star system and the global establishment are truly becoming saturated with lately, is all focused, including Bergoglio's false church, on this theme of artificial intelligence. A threat, Stephen Hawking said, even a threat to the very survival of the human species. And yes, because imagine that if even with the atomic bomb got out of control, so we got Nagasaki, Hiroshima, etc. So imagine what could happen if artificial intelligence were to take shape, to gain ground without any ethical control whatsoever. Because apparently for Sylvia, the Vatican's involvement is hardly surprising, seeing as this sham of a church, Santa, that's not just a player, that's, I'd say, the official moral sponsor. Having the Vatican's backing for artificial intelligence is a big deal. And in fact, yesterday, to my enormous surprise, my lawyer friend from Milan sent me this sensational news via one of my loyal followers. It also raises a moral question. Aren't we once again witnessing a profanation of the sacraments? Bergoglio's there, profaning the sacraments with the false church of Santa, because they're all partisans of Santa. Marriage with Amoris Laetitia, Fiducia Supplicans, and so on. The sacrament of confession is a serious matter for reflection, because yesterday, news broke of a virtual Jesus who confesses the faithful in Switzerland by means of an artificial intelligence application. Now we'll see why these diabolical experiments exist and where they lead. Meanwhile, the fact we're in Lucerne, the city where, incidentally, von Balthasar is buried, where recently St. Peter's Chapel presented the experimental art installation Deus in Machina, which puts an artificial intelligence version of Jesus inside the confessional. In short, the faithful have been able to, in these past few hours, go to this St. Peter's Chapel to confess to an artificial Jesus. Worshippers can share, we always read in the Chronicles, their thoughts and questions with a heavenly hologram. I don't know if you realize what levels of... We've reached the point of anti-Christian anticipation. On the other hand, it's no surprise I wanted to say this at the end. I'm anticipating it, seeing as the signal, as you can see, is a bit weak. Please bear with me. But on the other hand, my dear children, when Bergoglio has been telling priests and confessors for years to always give the solution, it's obvious that you can get to confession with artificial intelligence, with robot Jesus. Because if the solution is, why should priests tire themselves in confessionals hearing the faithful's whispered sins? The solution, it can be given mechanically too. The Church would have clarified that this is not an act that can still be considered on a par with confession, but it's always the tactic, the technique of the boiled frog. Despite this, interacting with an artificial intelligence from Jesus's robot, whose image appears projected onto a screen inside the confessional, it can create a sacred moment for the faithful. Or at least, that's what the extraordinary Swiss Church lets us know, keen to specify that the installation aims to encourage visitors to think critically about the limits of technology within a religious context. It's always deception behind it, and so it's not done for, as technical tests, to inhibit consciences. What's the problem Stephen Hawking proposes? I find it interesting that we're talking about this today. I'll come back to it. because we all need to understand the boundaries. I first speaking, perhaps we erred by not noticing. Now we face a confessing robot, Jesus. What's the real issue? That artificial intelligence is targeting, pay close attention, the theft of our identity. Because artificial intelligence is ultimately designed, ends up being designed, to replace, you understand, the human being. And one, for example, there's this book here that I've been sponsoring these days by Vito Mancuso. Here it is. His latest work, Destination Hope. It's certainly not preachy, but it highlights the difficulties that some modern initiatives can have, making it clear that the issue is very serious. That is, the project might be to replace the human us, that is, the human mind, the human logos, with a robot logos. So, in the end, we'll no longer have the right to our own identities. In the end, we'll risk being replaced in our thinking by another official thought, that of artificial intelligence. They're unsettling, but not at all surreal, seeing as there's already a robot Jesus who confesses. So, let's carry on reading and see some testimonies. I was surprised, says a loyal follower, because idiots are everywhere. It was so lovely. I can't believe it. I think it's all made up. Even though it's a machine, it gave me so much advice. Got it? Right. Well, here we are. Completely bonkers. My dear children, look, I don't know if you've ever read Orwell's novel. Right? You get me, yeah? Yes, it's that novel there that predicted things from our time. Unthinkable things we're sadly facing now. Do you have any idea that we would need, people in Switzerland needed spiritual advice from a robot? So how can a robot ever speak in God's name? So you see another God speaking. It's the God-man. It's the God Ubermensch. It's the God Superman. It's the God Lucifer. It's the God Devil. Got it? It can't be the eternal Trinitarian God speaking through Holy Scripture and communicating His grace through the sacraments, which, you see, require sacred ministers as an instrumental cause. Got it? But this person, which I don't think is true, says, I was taken by surprise. It was so lovely, even though it's a machine. She gave me so much advice, even from a Christian point of view. I felt helped, and I left feeling really reassured. We're at a level of human degradation now, let's say moral decay, purely human, anthropological. We're at a level of moral degradation, my dear friends, human, anthropological. Today's anthropology is, I'd say, I don't know, it's surreptitious. Today this woman went to confession with a robot Christ. She actually went into the confessional. She had the hologram of the Christ that spoke to her. She asked, she told how the penitent does, and the hologram answered her, and she left happy. So the Lucerne Church experiment seems to have worked. The artificial intelligence responds to requests clearly and precisely, just like any parish priest would. Except that, unlike a parish priest, it's always available. The Christ hologram is available 24 hours a day, as Maria Schmid, a member of the Swiss Church in Lucerne, has pointed out. Some argue this stuff is a bit excessive. We should be careful when it comes to faith, to pastoral care. In finding meaning in religion, commented ethics professor Peter Kirschlager. It's an area where we humans are vastly superior to machines, so we should do these things ourselves. This is what one of the blogs commented. There are also some other blogs, let's read, some other expressions. The installation was introduced in St. Peter's Chapel, the oldest Catholic church in the city of Lucerne in Switzerland, and cool. And so it will culminate on the 27th of November with a presentation and discussion of the results of this project. And the boiled frog technique starts it off like blessings with tickets, the community's response to dear flowers. If you haven't understood that you need to get out of Babylon and take refuge in the little remnant, you sort it out yourselves. You can't say you weren't told. You do as you please. So, reading on the parish website, we learn that the project was conceived by Philip Ausbauer and Alyosha Smolich of Immersive Realities Peter, of the Lucerne University of Applied Sciences and Arts, and Maria Schmid, a resident theologian of the parish. Let's see a bit more how this robot Jesus works. So peace be with you, brother. The robot Jesus starts when a person enters the confessional, regardless of who the person is, their assessment, and then the robot Jesus adds whatever is troubling your heart today. The aim of the program is to encourage people to think. This is what Smith says, critically examining the boundaries of technology in the context of religion, according to the team that created it. But we shouldn't be too surprised, because a few years ago, you understand, there were attempts to, shall we say, collectivize mind control. There have been attempts to, shall we say, collectivize mind control. Get what I mean? Everyone in, no one out, because of an alarm. That was what it was. These were technical tests to control the masses by the global elite. I don't know if everyone's inside and nobody's outside on the street. It was a resounding experiment, Seeing men of the cloth close to Our Lady, who then fell for it, saying yes, it was necessary for her to come to save the human race, should give one more pause for thought than you might think. Why? Everyone was at home. You couldn't even go to church that season. Mind control of the collective consciousness. So with this artificial intelligence, in my opinion, we're facing what could be the decisive frontier in the construction of a Superman, in the face of which a part of the community could even be destined for the extermination of consciousness. Don't get me wrong. So it would seem then, according to the organizers' testimonies, that the penitents were happy. They were happy to have confessed, let's say. They don't talk about confession, but that's what it amounts to have experienced moments of intimacy. Glad only robots were in confession. Sorry, slipped out. Because according to Schmid, the program was trained on sacred scriptures and theological texts taken from the internet. So he says Christ is so funny, he was theologically prepared, because he had been with artificial intelligence. Here Siphonogics was right, truly a risk, a threat to the survival of humanity. The internet's full of gospel interpretations, but in all tests, its answers matched St. Peter's Church's theology, Schmid said. Right, I'm pleased that the avatar still presents itself in a certain sense as a technical object. At the same time, the answers it gives are also fascinating. So there's a lot to talk about when it comes to artificial intelligence in a religious context. The priests are fed up, or so they say where I come from, to the point of being practically depressed. They don't do anything because people don't go to church. People only go to church for funerals, weddings, and first communions. Otherwise, the church will be left without worshipers. Then after that, they put a robot in the confessional. In a moment we can hope. Look, these things that are said like this, that seem like nonsense, yesterday they didn't go there, but instead, today we're witnessing something that's actually happening. We could have a robot celebrating Mass. Imagine a Father Celestino created as a hologram, or even a robot walking barefoot to the altar, dressed in sacred vestments, celebrating Mass with a beard. But it's not Father Celestino, it's a robot. Is it Father Celestino? Well, we don't know yet. This is the frontier that the alliance between Bergoglio's false church and the global power elite is pushing forward. Among the positive comments, there's one from a parishioner who spoke with Jesus' avatar. I was surprised it was so easy, and even though a machine gave me so much advice, people went crazy. People really went crazy. Another one told me he was able to reaffirm my way of thinking, and he was able to help me with questions I had. For example, how can I help other people understand better and get closer to him? Yes, of course, because now that Christ is a robot, he's always available. It's like when people went to Padre Pio and word spread that Padre Pio was a holy man and heard confessions and knew hearts. Now there's a new Padre Pio in Lucerne because people are spreading the word, so they're telling each other to go confess their sins around there. One last thought before we move on to the ethical conclusions. Other sites have also covered this. I'd like to read this. That is, according to the theologian Schmid, who advanced this experience in Lucerne, this device should finally lead to a new approach to the Bible, just as happened with the invention of printing and the translation of the scriptures into national languages. He said, at the time these technologies were considered dangerous for the Catholic Church, printing and translation into national languages. It challenged its control over Bible interpretation. Now, with artificial intelligence, we find ourselves once again with a tool we can't control, and that scares us. Hello, Jesus. Let's conclude with a final dialogue recorded with the avatar. Hi, Jesus, that was just the beginning. Reply. Hi, peace be with you, my friend. If in moments of uncertainty and doubt, remember that faith can move mountains. What troubles your heart today? Right? So he says, what are the problems of faith? The Jesus avatar's response is remarkable. You're thinking about the role and nature of faith in our modern world. Then, when pressed to say more, the artificial Jesus clarified, in an age of technology and rapid change, the core of our faith remains unchanged: love, hope, and faith. Think about how using technology could strengthen and critically analyze faith. These are terrifying details, my dear children. So the big newspapers, the major national and international news outlets, usually dedicate some space to these kinds of things, especially in Italy. They've been utterly silent on this news. How come? Cats birthed. Cats birthed. Right then, I've just told you about the Confession with Christ robot from Lucerne, which, announced 20 years ago, 30 years ago, would only have made you all smile, but now it's a reality. Let's conclude with a few observations. Artificial intelligence is a project allied with transhumanism. This is about replacing human thought with AI, made by humans. Within this need to bypass the human mind, and the enormous risk inherent in that is already apparent, lies a Luciferian project to create a man different from the one created by God. Because the human mind, as mentioned, has limits philosophically and theologically. The human mind is extraordinary. It races at a speed, I warn you, faster than light. However, the human mind also has its limits. The mind lies. Many excellent psychiatrists, psychologists, and even spiritual masters teach you to play with your own mind, because otherwise it goes its own way. But then, The Artificial Intelligence Project is to build an artificial intelligence with sophisticated mathematical systems, a kind of Luciferian software. Here, my dear children, we are, in my opinion, in the presence of Satan's software creation. And it's incredible, third point, that Bergoglio's false church encourages it so much. Bergoglio recently spoke at a symposium, a forum. He gave his opinion on artificial intelligence, saying that this artificial intelligence can open positive frontiers for mankind, etc. Actually, there's already, fourth point, the desecration of the sacrament of confession. It's true they rushed to clarify that there was no solution, etc. I doubt everything, but without a doubt, this parody of the sacrament of confession, where you find a hologram Jesus who confesses you with a robot voice, is a true prophecy. If we'd been in the days of the true Catholic Church, and soon perhaps the authority will come out. We await the great prelate, or should we simply recognize him? I don't know. This is your business, as much as mine. What I'd like to say is that in the times of John Paul II and Benedict XVI, an initiative like this, the Pontifical Academy for Life, the Vatican Observatory, the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, would undoubtedly have intervened to stigmatize and condemn the pastoral and sacramental abuse of the sacrament of confession, because that's what it is, abuse. A robot can't dispense solutions, a robot can't speak in the name of Christ nor of the Church. A robot is a robot is a robot, it's not a spiritual presence. And that's the final point. They want to cancel the spiritual dimension. In my opinion, we'll soon see a flourishing of Fiolacati by 2030, unless the Eternal Father decides to end it all before then. There's this date, as you know, of the 2030, in which a very specific agenda must be addressed. Then, my dear children, the project is not only that of the Übermensch, to build the Superman who surpasses the man willed by God. Because man has rage, let us remember many philosophers, atheistic, materialistic, Marxist philosophy. Man has within him this rage of not being able to find a way to overcome the limit that God has set. He wants to overcome it at all costs. What the crucifier instills in the syncretist and globalist world powers is to conquer this rage by building something that allows us to overcome the limit. And artificial intelligence, as Stefan Hoken said, is undoubtedly the risk of this overcoming that then spirals out of control. Because that's always how it's gone. That's always how it's gone. Whenever humanity has created something new, it has ended up losing control and it has turned against us. How might it turn against us? By constructing a robotic identity. Dear flowers, look, frontiers to explore and study. I'll have to commit to this with you. I hope this reflection today wasn't too boring for all of you. The robot Christ Confessor should make us think. That is, replacing spiritual identity, consciousness, let's say the spirit, the consciousness. But there's snow here, there's snow, look. Wow, it's snowing. So I'm saying replace human consciousness, which is the highest level of human being. What distinguishes man, even if there's only a 2% difference in genetic makeup with chimpanzees and monkeys, but that 1 or 2% constitutes a leap that's not just quantitative, it's qualitative. That is, there's consciousness which the animal doesn't have. When an animal like a horse reacts to certain instincts that affect humans, it's because humans have trained it that way, because humans have consciousness, not animals. So conscience is the spirit within us. Conscience is God's mark within us, and it's spiritual. So the plan of Saint and the world's power brokers, all sold to the devil, is to build a man, an anthropos, with a robotic conscience. So there are these idiots, I say this respectfully, who went to confess and were happy because the robot gave them the right advice. Just think what we're heading for, to receive advice and move forward on life's path. And in the face of all this, we must persevere with the Small Change Project. The image we had yesterday of the meeting in Savigliano, so familiar, homely, yet with a house full of faithful people, shows that, thank God, there's already a Catholic people who won't bend. Whatever the cost, even for the sake of future children, future generations, it won't bend to these dictates. That's for sure. That's for sure, my dear children. Look, it won't bend to a robotic conscience, to a satanic software, artificial intelligence, which could have something good in itself, is actually the project of a satanic software that has in mind the construction of a robot Christ, a robot church, robot sacraments, in such a way that spiritual consciousness ends up being only robotic consciousness. I apologize if I spoke a little too difficultly. I often work in the mornings in prayer to prepare catechesis like today's, which are demanding, so that everyone can grasp them with simple language.